Hey everyone, I'm about to go away for the weekend and I'm making enough pizza sauce to feed 15 people, and I just thought that I would share the recipe with you so maybe you can make it at home too. So I'm going to share the recipe for you as if I'm cooking it with 1 can of tomatoes, but really I'm going to use 3 cans. So the first thing you need is a can of diced tomatoes, and just any no-name brand will do. And you're just going to light up your frying pan, a nice big deep frying pan. Okay, and you're gonna dump in your can of tomatoes, and we'll start to get those hot, so high heat is totally fine. And like I said, I'm using 3 cans, but the recipe's for 1. And normally I would use chopped garlic, but I don't have any right now, and I do have some minced garlic that comes in a tube, so I'm just going to use that. And I would use about a teaspoon of chopped garlic, so I'm going to use about a teaspoon of this garlic that comes in the tube. And there we go. So a teaspoon of garlic for 1 can of tomatoes. And then we're going to use some fresh ground pepper. It's going to take a minute. And I also use an Italian seasoning. Kind of any brand of Italian seasoning will do, something that's got a blend of basil and thyme and oregano usually. And I'd use about a teaspoon of that. And like I said, I'm making a big batch, so I'm just going to kind of dump some in. Just make sure you can see. And this recipe also doubles as a pasta sauce recipe, and I'll tell you when that can kind of flip over into the pasta sauce recipe. And I like to use a little bit of paprika in the pizza and the pasta sauce. It gives it kind of a smoky flavor and brings out the flavors of everything else. So for every 1 can of diced tomatoes, I would use a half a teaspoon of paprika. And once this video is posted, I'll write out the whole recipe and post it below the live feed. I like to use a dash of chili pepper, so some red chili pepper flakes. And for every 1 can, I would use about 1/4 teaspoon. Give it a good stir and let that kind of soak in. For me, it's starting to bubble up on the side already and get nice and hot. And my pot's a little bit too small, or my pan rather. And I like to use a little bit of brown sugar in my pizza sauce and in my pasta sauce. I find a little bit of sugar in it. It kind of takes away some of the acidity of the tomatoes. So for every 1 can of diced tomatoes, I would usually use about 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. So I've got my brown sugar. And a good tip is for your brown sugar, if you leave your brown sugar in the cupboard and you find it gets hard, just take a piece of bread, a slice of bread, and throw it in your container of brown sugar. Make sure it's airtight, so it's in an airtight container in a Ziploc bag. And after a few hours, the bread will give the moisture from the bread into the brown sugar, and your brown sugar will get soft again. Even an old stale piece of bread works, so sometimes what I do is I'm just going to turn down my heat here first. So my heat's now on medium because the tomato sauce is starting to boil. So my bread tip is when your bread starts to go bad and if you haven't eaten it all or you don't eat the crusts, throw the crusts in a baggie in the freezer and keep them. And then if you've got hard brown sugar, you can just or you've got fresh cookies, you take a piece of bread that's from the freezer and throw it in your brown sugar or throw it in your container of cookies, and it'll keep everything nice and moist. So it's a good tip for the bread that you might not eat or use. Okay, so I've added my sugar, my garlic, my Italian seasoning, my pepper, my paprika, and my red chili flakes. I'm going to add a dash of garlic powder here, just to make sure I've got enough garlic and flavor. So every 1 can, I'd add about 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then, another little tip that I like to do is, if we're drinking some red wine at home and we don't quite finish the bottle in the first few days and it's going to go off, then I like to put it in an airtight container and leave it in the fridge. And once it's in the fridge, it won't go bad. So I just kind of stock it up anytime we drink a little bit of red wine and we don't finish it. So I put a splash of red wine in there, just give it a nice little bit of flavor. We're going to turn the heat back up so that boils in. And then this is pasta sauce, or this is pizza sauce rather. Boom, done. If you want, you can add a little bit of basil to give it a nice herby flavor. But if I wanted to keep going and turn this into a pasta sauce, for me, what I would do then is take out my little hand blender, and I would add some celery, maybe some leftover broccoli from the fridge, some small zucchini, and probably some onion. And I would puree it in my blender, and then I would dump the vegetable puree right in here. And then we've got a veggie-laden, veggie-loaded pasta sauce ready to go. And for now though, my pizza sauce is done. That took less than 5 minutes, so it's quick, it's easy, it's fast, it's super healthy, and we know what every ingredient in here is, and there's no salt. We use no salt. And my camera just froze. I think it's unfrozen now. But as I was just saying, this was quick. We know what all the ingredients are. It was easy, it was healthy, and that's it. We're done. Really quick. All right. Thanks, guys.